Not be here this next Sunday, and that's why I was kind of preaching some things concerning Christmas this morning, and I want to go ahead and continue the thought tonight. We talked about 5 gifts that you could give your children for Christmas, but you know what? I felt like the parents were left out, right? I mean, you know, we need some things for kids, and how we need to give our parents good gifts as well. And so tonight we'll look at 5 things to give your parents for Christmas. And of course, these are just kind of universal. You know, it doesn't matter how old you are. These are good things to do. And so number 1 is this. If you want to give your parents a good Christmas present, then you need to give them a good, lasting legacy. You know, we need to know how and learn how to obey God first and foremost. In Exodus 19 and verse 5 it says, "Now therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant, then ye shall be my own possession from among all the peoples, for all the earth is mine." We need to obey God because everything is in His control. Everything is in His hands. And so that is the first and foremost thing. We need to also remember to do this. We need to pray with our family and for our family. You know, it's nice. I know that if you've experienced this, you know how nice this is. But it is nice whenever I'm sitting around and my kids come up and they ask me a Bible question, or they come up and they want to talk about something concerning the Bible. And you know, how much more would it beneficial would it be if men, you know, you went to your parents or maybe even your in-laws and said, "Hey, you know what? I'm praying for you. I want to pray, you know, right now. Let's pray together." But another thing that we can do to leave a lasting legacy for our parents is we can give to God. In Psalm 116, verses 12 and following, it says, "What shall I render unto Jehovah for all His benefits toward me? I will take the cup of salvation and call upon the name of Jehovah. I will pay my vows unto Jehovah, yea, in the presence of all His people. Precious is in the sight of Jehovah is the death of His saints. O Jehovah, truly I am thy servant, the son of thy handmaid. Thou hast loosed my bonds. I will offer to thee the sacrifice of thanksgiving, and will call upon the name of Jehovah. I will pay my vows unto Jehovah, yea, in the presence of all His people, in the courts of Jehovah's house, in the midst of thee, O Jerusalem, praise ye Jehovah." You know, it's a wonderful thing to have a lasting legacy. It's one of those things that I'm hoping to look forward to as I get older, that my children grow, and I pray that they will grow up in the way that we're trying to teach them and nurture an admonition of the Lord. And we pray that one day they'll be good, solid Christians, and they'll have their own children and do the same thing that we've tried to do with them. In 2 Corinthians 8 and verse 5, though, we see that, you know, and you can give monetarily, and that's what we need to do on the first day of the week. But another thing that we need to do is we need to give of ourselves, give of our time, give of our efforts. You know, I think of some of the big things that we do around here. Of course, you know, we'll have gospel meetings from time to time, and, you know, every summer we'll have VBS. I know that we have so many people that get involved in that, and we have a lot of efforts as far as teaching is concerned, and have some benevolence efforts here in various ways. But, you know, we need to give of ourselves, give of our time. You know, that's a big problem, I think, today. There's a lot of people out there that have good intentions, but yet they fill up their time with other things. And that's a very, very pointed thing that we see in the screw tape letters from C.S. Lewis, filling up time is a big deal. If we can fill up people's time, then they'll never serve the Lord. But we need to fill up our time with good things and fill up our time with serving the Lord. And so that leaves us a last thing here, and we talked about this a little bit this morning, well, quite a bit this morning, but as parents, we have parents, of course, and if we're going to leave a good, lasting legacy, that means that we have to continue the legacy. It doesn't end just with children, but it goes on, or at least it should, to grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren. Wouldn't it be so wonderful to be able to say, you know what, I'm from a long line of Christians, or I know that I'm not really, envious is not the right word. I don't know what the right word is, but I'm a little, I'm just going to say envious because I don't know the right word, but I think about like my father-in-law, and he comes from a line of preachers, and in his family are a line of preachers, and I look at my family, and as far as gospel preachers are concerned, I'm the first one. And so, I'm hoping that I have a long line. I don't get to have that pedigree for myself, but I hope that my children, my sons, decide that they're going to do the very same thing. But it all starts at home. It starts with us following God, following His commands, striving to do what's right all the time, giving that great example that you can for your kids, and determine that, everything, we're going to have fun in this life. We're going to have lots of fun as a family, but the first thing that we're going to do, and we're going to have a good time doing it, is we're going to serve the Lord. Number 2, you want to give a good gift to your parents? Well, have some respect for your upbringing. That's the big joke, of course, when you think about, therapists, what is it that therapists like to do, supposedly? Allegedly, therapists like to get you in their office and say what? Well, here, let's find out what the root of the problem is. Oh, the root of the problem is your parents. Trying to blame it on somebody else. Well, that's not necessarily true. But a lot of times people will look at their upbringing and say, you know what, I don't like my upbringing. I didn't, have the best parents. But you know what? You can still have respect for your upbringing. And I think that's very possible no matter where you come from. But you may have had the best upbringing in the world. And because of that, this is... you're going to have an easy streak to some degree than others, because when you don't have that great of an upbringing, what do you have to do? Well, you have to learn everything for yourself. You didn't have the example, and so you have to learn to do things for yourself. But when you have a good upbringing, especially one of Christian parents, you're going to learn things from having seen your family do this very thing. For instance, you're going to learn, if you were brought up in a Christian household, surely you had been taught to follow God. And so you need to teach your children to do the same thing. Teach your children about the importance of attendance, Hebrews 10:24 and 25. Teach your children, to worship God. That happens not only here, but it can happen inside the home. It's good to have those devotionals at home and worship God in the home. John 4 and verse 24, God is a spirit, and they that worship Him must worship in spirit and in truth. Teach your children that, you need to do things the right way, but you also need to love God, and as you're doing it, have that right attitude as well. I think among all of this, though, we've already referenced this, but let's go a little bit deeper. You need to teach your children to love God. I think if you could teach your children this one thing, then everything else has to fall in place, right? If you can teach your children to love God, then everything else has to kind of fall in place. Now, how do we do that? Well, you teach your children to love God by, of course, worshiping Him. In Luke 4 and verse 8 it says, "And Jesus answered and said unto him, It is written, Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and Him only shalt thou serve." Put God first and teach your children to worship. Now, I know over the past couple of weeks, I'm probably going to have to scale back on this a little bit, but over the past few weeks I've mentioned attendance quite a bit. And one of the things that I really feel like attendance is a big deal. Now, this is why. If you were to only teach your children about attendance, now hopefully you would teach them everything else, right? But if you taught your children the only major lesson was to attend, guess what? They're going to attend, and they're going to get other things. Now, I know that that was one of the major things that I was taught growing up. You need to be there. Didn't matter what it was. If they had a spring cleaning, guess where the McBrayer family was? Yeah, we were polishing pews. That's what we were doing. We were taking out the trash. You know what? If there was a gospel meeting, do you know where the McBrayer family was? We weren't anywhere. We weren't at the movie theaters. We were at the church building for the gospel meeting. You know what? If there was some sort of a special occasion on a Saturday, do you know where the McBrayer family was? We were there. And when it came down to worship, there wasn't a question. Matter of fact, my parents made it very clear early on that guess where the McBrayer family was going to be? Every member of that family was going to be there. It didn't matter if some punk kid that was playing soccer needed to go play soccer. Nope, that punk kid was going to have to go, and he was going to have to be there, and that punk kid was me. But, the McBrayer family, they were going to be in services. We shouldn't question where we're going to be, and I think if we can teach our kids that, man, we're gonna be doing so much better than some of the people in the past. We need to teach our children how to love God by worshiping Him. But part of that, and part of what we've mentioned, is in order to do this, you have to put Him first. In Mark 12, verses 30 and 31, it says, "And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind, and with all thy strength. The second is this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is none other commandment greater than these." In 1 John 2 and verse 15, "Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him." Now, it's not wrong. I'm going to make sure we understand. It is not wrong for us to have hobbies and to have likes in this world. That's not what this is saying. I've mentioned several times that, I, as well as probably most of the men in the congregation here, man, I like football. I just can't put that before God. I might like music, but I can't put that before God. You name anything that you like in this world, you can like it as long as it's wholesome. You just can't put that before the Lord. Another thing is that, if we're going to teach our children to love God, then we need to instill in them a desire to be with Him, which means that we're going to have to teach them as much as we can, not only here, but in the home. We're going to have to teach and say, look, this is why we love God, because He first loved us. In Psalm 73 and verse 25, it says, "Whom have I in heaven but Thee? And there is none upon earth that I desire besides Thee." In Psalm 42 and verse 1, "As the hart panteth after the water brooks, so panteth my soul after Thee, O God." In Psalm 19, verses 9 and 10, "The fear of Jehovah is clean, enduring forever. The ordinances of Jehovah are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold, sweeter also than honey and the droppings of the honeycomb." Brethren, our desire should be God. And it comes from a good understanding of what He's done for us. And then, of course, we need to obey Him. 1 John 5 in verse 3. For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not grievous unto us. You think about leaving that legacy. Maybe your parents did the best they could, but they fell short, as we all do, in different ways. Maybe you look at your parents and go, man, if they had only done this, and if they had only done that, and you may have some of those. And some of that may be even valid. It may be valid that you look back and go, man, I really love my parents, but I wish they had done this. This would have been far better for me in the long run. And maybe you make that sort of a determination in your mind that, I'm going to do better in this regard concerning my own family. Maybe it is that you have more of a spiritual mindset in the home. You're talking about God more. Maybe that's the complaint. Maybe there's some other complaint. But the fact is that we still need to appreciate the good that they did. And I remember having to talk to this guy one time, and we were working together at a mental hospital, and working at the mental hospital, Kenny. I was not there. I was not an attendee, but we were working together, and he had mentioned that he had a strained relationship with his father. Matter of fact, he said that he did not like his father at all. And we were talking about parenting, and he had mentioned, well, as a parent, I'm going to do way better than my father. And I'm going to make sure that my children have a good household to come into. And he had talked about how he didn't drink because his father drank and would hurt them as children. And so he said, there's not a drop of alcohol that's ever going to be in my house for that very reason. And I had mentioned something one day about appreciating something that had happened in my childhood, and he said, I don't appreciate anything about my childhood. And I just said, hey, yeah, I think you can appreciate something from your childhood. Having known him for a while, I said, you can appreciate that you at least know what not to do. I mean, I know that's a hard thing to think about, but you can go, hey, look, at least I know I don't need to be like this. And you can appreciate your upbringing because guess what? You're going to have a better family for the very fact that you had to experience that. Nobody wants to experience that, but you know what? Your kids will never have to experience that because what you've been through. You know what? We can think about that in many regards, but we need to be humble and to think about our upbringing and have respect for it, no matter what kind of upbringing we had. Number 3, if you want to give your parents a good gift for Christmas, then you need to have a concern for their well-being. In Ephesians 6, verses 1 and 2, it says, Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise. What does it mean to honor? The word there means to honor, respect, to set a price on, and even to assist. And so what does this mean, to honor your father and mother? Well, specifically, it means taking care of your parents when they're old, valuing your parents and helping them when they need your help. Which I think leads us to another good point to have. You know what? You want to give another good gift to your parents? Well, give them the gift of a simple phone call. Phone calls can go a long way, can't they? If you've got parents still around, give them a call. Maybe you see your parents in person a lot, but maybe you don't. And whatever the case, give them a phone call, check up on them. I was looking back at some things, and in 2015 at the Oscar acceptance speech, J.K. Simmons, I don't even know really who he is. I don't watch any of his stuff, but he said when he was accepting his award, he said, and I'm grateful every day for the most remarkable person I know, my wife, the wonderful Michelle Schumacher. I'm grateful for your love, your kindness, your wisdom, your sacrifice, and your patience, which brings me to the above average children, even though I may try their patience more. Joe and Olivia, you are extraordinary human beings, smart, funny, kind, loving people, and that's because you are a reflection of your mother. And if I may call your mom, everybody, I've told this to like 1 billion people or so. Call your mom, call your dad. If you're lucky enough to have a parent or two alive on this planet, call them. Don't text, don't email. Call them on the phone, tell them you love them, and thank them, and listen to them for as long as they want to talk to you. Thank you, Mom and Dad. You know, I'm not to that season of life yet when I'm older and my kids are out of the house and I'm having to wait for the phone calls. But I tell you what, I know that when that day comes, I'm going to enjoy every single one that I get. And if you've got a parent still on the face of this planet, then give them a call. You know, you will be reminded of their parenting during some of these conversations. You're going to be an encouragement to them. But in Proverbs 1 and verse 8, it says, "My son, hear the instruction of thy father, and forsake not the law of thy mother." You know, I realize that the older I get, there are actually, fewer things that my parents can instruct me on. There are things that, as I get older and I've got more experience, I don't need to call my parents and ask what I need to do in this regard. I don't need to call and ask for advice on certain things. But guess what? Is there still wisdom there? Are there still things that they've endured that I've not yet to endure? Well, surely. And so because of that, I need to take the time to listen to the instructions of my parents even still, and try to still glean wisdom. Last but not least, you want to give a good gift to your parents. And really this one spreads way beyond your parents. But give the gift of Christian love. The love that can only be given by a Christian. Now, if your parents are still alive and are not Christians, then you need to do everything in your power to bring them to the Lord. Remember what we said this morning about Noah? Noah didn't go off and save hundreds of people. He didn't go and baptize a bunch of people, nothing like that. But he did save his family. If your parents aren't Christians and they're still alive, do what you can to save them. If your parents are alive and they are Christians, then love them as parents, but also love them as brethren. That's one of those nice things, we have one of our kids has become a Christian, and so, it's nice because not only are we parents, but we're brethren, and we have this dual relationship where we instruct them as not only parents, but in some cases we instruct them as brethren. So if your parents are alive, love them not only as your parents, but love them as you would brethren. Ephesians 4 and verse 2, with all lowliness and meekness, with long suffering, forbearing one another in love. Or 1 John 2 and verse 10, he that loveth his brother abideth in the light, and there is no occasion of stumbling in him. And if your parents have passed on, but they were Christians, remember this, in Revelation 14 and verse 13. And I heard a voice from heaven saying, write, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from henceforth. Yea, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, for their works follow with them. I hope that you're with me on this today. A lot of these things have to deal with that legacy, leaving a legacy behind you. And your parents, they want the best for you. And so because of that, we need to make sure that we're, respecting all the things that they taught us that were good, and we respect our upbringing and try to live as a Christian ought. And so maybe it is that you're here this evening and you have not yet put on Christ in baptism. And we know that baptism saves us. 1 Peter 3:21, the like figure whereunto even baptism doth also now save us. Not the removal of the filth of the flesh, but the answer of a good conscience toward God. And so we need to obey that gospel plan of salvation in order to get to that point. But you hear, believe, repent, confess, and you have to be baptized. And then for the rest of us, if you've already done that, then you need to live faithfully. And so if you have not lived faithfully up to this point, make things right with the Lord right now. Be faithful once again. And please come as we stand and as we sing.